We are a well-oiled machine here. You know what? Good morning, everyone. I'm Don Zavis, National Sales Trainer and Sales Coach. Want to welcome you to our Speaking of Sales training class every Friday, 9 o'clock here in the Old Pueblo. Be there, be square. It's an absolute privilege to do what we do. As you see, there's only two of us on stage today. Mr. Waechter's feeling a little bit under the weather, but I understand he'll be rebounding back nicely and will likely be joining us in the future. As always, our new counterpart in crime, David. Good morning, David.
Good morning. How is everyone doing today?
Things are good in the world. It's my birthday today.
Woo.
Yep, turned 30 today. Can you believe it?
Wow.
Twice. I turned 30 twice, plus 2. So it's twice plus 2, 62. So if you want to shower me with follow-ups like, oh my God, you look so great, I'll certainly take them, right? I'm shy and unassuming.
So one of the cool things I learned about a birthday, one of my wise men once told me, he said, the two most important days of your life is the day you were born and the day you know why you were born.
That's right.
And I hope you know both of those.
You know what? It's funny because I'm not there yet, but I'm getting there.
Right.
You know, and it's interesting because I love being older. Legitimately, I love being older. All the stuff that I worried about, I wish I could go back to my 18-year-old self and now with this bountiful wisdom go back to my 18-year-old self and say, listen, all the stuff that you're concerned about is BS. It's meaningless.
I know.
It's meaningless, right? This is the most important thing.
Keith has a song about that.
It is, right? And again, and this
is what I know now.
Oh, yeah. And it's interesting that I realize now, I realized a couple years ago in my late 50s, the true wealth is time. Oof. And again, but it took me 58 years to get there to realize the true wealth is time. It's not money. It's none of those things. Yeah. Nobody's ever on their deathbed, I think, is going to go, oh, my God, I'm so happy that I worked over Christmas or anything like that. You're going to think of all the things, hopefully, that you did, not lament the things that you didn't do. But you're getting me on a wonderful day, and we have an absolutely wonderful session today. But I like to start off with just current events because it's so predominant. We have people that join us from different parts of the United States, and east and west and north and south. You know, and it's interesting that the business world now is in what I'm calling quiet turmoil, right? So quiet turmoil is a phrase that we coined back in 2008. And what you had was you had the fallout of the real estate system, and you had the problems in the money system, and there was just all of this stuff happening. Right now, what we have is a lot of turmoil in the business system, but it's kind of like just percolating below the seams, right? You know, obviously, we just had a hit on interest rates, so you know that that's going to nosedive a lot of real estate sales. So now you're going to have the mortgage people that are feeling it, and the Home Depots of the world that really are keyed into new home sales and real estate agents and mortgage and inspectors, and there's so many car sales, right? It's so difficult now to purchase a new or a used car because there are no good interest rates on the cars. So now in order to even make a car palatable, a lot of the manufacturers have had to throw giant rebates onto the cars. They can fraction off and then use as deposits. So there's a lot of quiet turmoil, and we in sales don't really have the ability to kind of sit idly by. You hear me say this. We kind of eat what we kill, so to speak. And if we don't, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but if you don't make a sale, you can't take the sale you almost made and deposit it into the bank. You can't show them the PO that almost got paid. It's like, here, I'd like to deposit this. Like, this almost happened. No, that's not that we're in. So that quiet turmoil has two effects. It has first effect that we call the groundhog effect, which is when people are scared, they just disappear. They do nothing. They don't want to spend any money, put any effort. They don't, it's almost like it's that analysis paralysis. They don't know what to do, therefore they do nothing.
Correct.
And you see that, and you see it like right now in the nonprofit world, which I know you're very tilted to. Has this, donations are going down. We don't know what to do. Where everybody's kind of wringing their hands and looking at each other for an answer. Are you seeing that out in the world?
Yeah. So definitely, whenever these situations starts to occur, I think Don explains this perfectly. Is that we naturally get into like a hibernation mode. Like, what are we gonna do? But unfortunately, what most people do is they focus on when problems arise. You usually focus on two things, but usually in a negative aspect. The first aspect is you focus on the past.
That's right.
You go backwards and you start to recognize what used to happen or what went wrong before.
Yep.
Or you start to focus on the future, but you future tense, but you look at yourself from your past, your negative things that happened in the past, you project that in the future. In reality, the most effective thing anyone can do is that focus on the present. You have the ability, what can you do now that's going to be able to expedite your situation? And when they say if you're stuck in the mud, if you're stuck in some butter, you better churn that milk so you can turn it into butter so you can get out, so you can stand on it. What are we talking about? It's just recognizing stopping working is never going to get you out of your situation, but the ability to recognize, okay, what can I do now, and being able to think of innovative ideas, looking elsewhere, other industries, look at what other people are doing, how other people are able to pivot within the same situation that we're all experiencing. How are others being successful, and see how you can use that and apply it to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And so one part of it is kind of the groundhog, right? You get afraid, you do nothing.
Right.
The second part is the people that really explode, and whether you look at during the Depression, the fallout of 2008, you look at our recent COVID experiences. Look at the businesses that exploded.
Oh, that boomed.
As a result of COVID. The best thing in the world for COVID was, for DoorDash. And Grubhub and Uber Eats and Zoom and all these things was COVID. I mean, here you have organizations that exploded. They've been around all that time.
Yeah, they've been around.
Right? But they exploded as a result. So you can usually take opportunities. So what I'm suggesting is, and there's an adage I love to use, is that nobody fell up the hill. Right? You don't fall up the hill, right? You don't fall into success. You don't fall into improved sales. Nobody ever fell up the hill. And when there's less people doing things, that's a better opportunity for you to shine.
Yes, sir.
So if you have, less things that are happening, even we'll use COVID and being a musician, there were bands that continued to tour even during COVID. And it was interesting, these weren't what I would call A-grade bands by any stretch, but they ended up having full houses because nobody else was doing it. Nobody else was touring, nobody else was providing anything. So they really, really were able to do some wonderful things. So right now is the time, right? We're right here in the beginning of August. We're literally on the cusp of starting our next year, right? So if you look at October, November, December as being the final quarter, and you're going to look at, July, August, and September as being the third quarter, you're really at the cusp of being able to really kick in your year. And for those that are sitting on the sidelines and doing nothing because they don't know what to do, this is now not the time. Right? There's really never been a better time to be out there, explode, make the investment, be more visible. There's one quick thing I want us to put on the board before David starts his session. So this, by the way, is all of the business 5 years ago in your industry. All right, so let's let you, and good morning, Maria, how are you? I met your daughter yesterday.
I know she's coming.
Yeah, she walked in and I looked at her, I go, holy crap, you look like Maria. She goes, good, I'm her daughter. Right? So this is all the business in your industry. So we'll take real estate. All right, so 5 years ago, pre-COVID, how much real estate business, just a guess is fine, how much real estate business was there in Tucson? $100 million? $100 million, okay? So 5 years ago in Tucson, there was $100 million of business. And this represents the average real estate agent's slice. I can't make it small enough, right? The tip is too wide to do it. I can't make that. That would be the slice of a hair, the size of a hair. $100 million in business. If your business, if the entire market dropped 1/3, so instead of being $100 million worth of business, you now have $66 million worth of business, right? Everybody follow me?
Yes.
You dropped 1/3 of the market. You still have all this to go. Even if the market goes down by 1/3, your slice is so small, you have still giant opportunities to go into. So even though the marketplace may seem and maybe legitimately be potentially smaller, since you represent such a small portion of it, even if it goes down by half, you still have this giant portion that you've never tapped into. Whether it's 100 million or 50 million doesn't make any difference. You still have all of this available to you that you never realize. And that's why I tell people, even in a down market, there's enormous opportunity. So David, what are you going to regale us with today?
Yeah, today I'm going to be talking about like five tips and 5 techniques that we could all implement currently now that will help us move forward in our business and make more sales and make more money.
Oh, you're scratching me where I itch.
Come on.
Go ahead, regale away.
All right. So first and foremost, I want to say good morning. How's everyone doing today?
Very good.
Good to see you guys here. Some familiar faces, see you back.
Yep.
How you doing back there? So today I wanted to get an opportunity to talk about, some techniques and things that we can do that we can implement literally today or in the near future that can move us forward. I think what's important sometimes when you're in situations like this is that people want to know, like, what can I do now? What can I do today or tomorrow that can actually help me move me forward in my sales process? And so what I was doing, I sort of looked up some things that currently now, what are the most common problems that people are dealing with, and then sort of create some tips and some techniques that you guys can implement that can do that. If I could help you, give you some tips and techniques that would help you move forward, would you guys like that?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Yep. So let's get that started. So one of the first things is that recognizing is changing the mentality of ourselves, right? I think, Don just broke down even just how to look at yourself as, when you see the big picture and you see problems, recognize that in reality, I only represent a hair of the market share, so therefore there's so much more still for me to gain. That's all terms of recognizing your mentality. So one of the changes in mentality we should have, I can use this still, is turning ourselves into a constant seekers. Okay, constant seekers of knowledge, right? So making yourself always working to gain more. When people say, like, Dave, I always say, I call them a constant seeker of knowledge. And what that means is you're always looking ways to get. What are things that you guys can do that can help you guys, okay? One of the first things is that, some of you individuals, you guys took the time, once again, thank you, take the time and gas to come here, to come to this place so you can get training. Any of you that goes through the weekly or every bi-weekly networking meetings, taking the time to actually seek training. So obviously, going and getting training is one of the ways that you can actually gain and seek some knowledge, right? Being in the presence of people who are more experienced, who have more knowledge in the things that you're seeking to do. Unfortunately, some people are just not even willing to take the time. But in the end of the day, one of my brothers wrote a book, said, takes the time it takes, right? And it's an old lesson say, if you take the time it takes, it'll take you less time, right? And us recognizing that, we have to be the people who says, what effort am I putting in to invest in yourself? You're always going to be investing in other people and putting your money in other places, paying for your bills, paying for other things. But how much are you investing in yourself? Become the people who say, what I want to do is I'm going to recognize I need to put this many hours into training. And so obviously you guys made a great choice to come in person. There's nothing more powerful than being in person in actually training with people, right? The most powerful connection is the interpersonal connection between people, right? When people can see your movements, can see your eyes, can see your mouth moving, can see your expressions, your ability to connect is way greater. So one of the first things to do is let's seek training. But in-person training, first of all, right? So seeking training, the first step will be better for you would try to go for in-person, right? If you can't do that, obviously we're going to seek maybe online, right? Obviously a great one would be go to Don Zavis's page, right? You get a chance to, even if you didn't get a chance to come here, you missed it, go on and check out the past weeks. Sometimes we're literally hitting the topics that you're currently dealing with, right? And so you have an opportunity to say, look, there's certain things I'm dealing with, but more importantly, sometimes, we're going to introduce things that you never were thinking about. And that's the things that you actually need to know, right? When they asked Socrates, they asked Socrates, what's the true meaning of wisdom? And Socrates' answer says, to know what you don't know, right? And become people who recognize that I actually recognize I don't know enough. And no matter how much we've done anything in life, there's a whole lot more to learn. And our willingness to seek that it shows the effort you have moving toward your own success, building yourself, and more importantly, building your business. Obviously, other things is that let's go into seeking a mentor, right? What is the power of a mentor? Recognizing sometimes you need to get that personal attention, okay? So obviously, like we know, Don Zavis, we have personal sales coaching that's available, right? These are things that you can do. When you have a personal relationship with someone, personal mentors, what you're doing is putting you in this position where you can actually be in the presence of somebody who we pray has been where you want to be. There's certain things you just can't learn by reading books. There's certain things you just can't learn by watching videos. There's something called experience that unfortunately we can't create overnight. And by being with the people who actually have been in that process, you're putting yourself in the best position. Recognizing that we need to exercise ourselves and make sure we're humble. You got to be humble enough to ask to be someone to be your mentor. Okay? I always said that, there's no way you really rise up in life without learning that aspect of you got to be humble enough to recognize that somebody knows more than you. And regardless of how good you think you are, sometimes just being in the presence, being around people, you're gonna pick up some of those things that you just never thought of. And so being able to say, well, I need to find a mentor. Sometimes you're like, well, how do I become a mentor? Who do I find? There are people, whatever field that you're in, whatever that you're doing, we all know that people love to talk about themselves. People love to be, exalted, unfortunately, but that's the truth, right? And so some of the easiest ways that you can gain a mentor is recognize somebody in your field who's very good at what they're doing and literally just go up and ask them, Miss Powell, I've heard about all the success that you've had in real estate, and one of the things I'm trying to do is learn how to be great in this industry. And I was told by so many others that you're the one who I should actually talk to. Do you think you can find time? I know you're busy. If you can find time to just spend a little bit of time, I'd love to pick your brain. Would that be okay?
You'd be my honor.
Right. But that's the point, right? Let's be humble enough to ask, but more importantly, let's be vigilant enough to recognize who's actually great in the field that you're in. Stop thinking that you're alone. Stop thinking that what you're going through is unique. Unfortunately, the wise man once said, there's nothing new under the sun. So what does that mean? We have to be the type of individuals that recognize, you know what? I know that there's people who are good at this. I'm not the only one doing this. And so let's be willing and able to seek out those who are great at what they're doing. But more importantly, do we have the humility and the push, the advent to actually go and ask them to be a mentor?
Everybody has different skills, and in the insurance industry, it's very common that the big hitters form study groups because everybody has a little bit different experience.
Yes.
They might be equal in talent, but everyone's different.
Different. And obviously, when you're talking about different types of groups in different industries, they're already, like you said, there are already groups that are already putting you in position to find those mentors and to find people who are great in what they do. And so therefore, all you're doing is really saying how much easier this is in this day and age, right? Especially with internet, us learning, how can we seek out events, seek out networking events that are already doing this, that are already putting us in contact with the same people, sometimes even being our competitors, right? But even being put in the position where I rub shoulders with the people who are already doing great in my industry. And that is what we want to do. We want to get ourselves in the position that, one, let me find a mentor, and let's be humble enough to do it as well, right? And making sure to also just being able to study your craft. I think that, unfortunately, I have fell victim to this myself. We settle in in believing our own press cuttings. Okay, like you're doing well. I've done so well. It's like what starts to happen is you start to be like, you start to coast. And unfortunately, what you have to recognize is that even if you're doing well, right? Even if you're actually doing well, you're making money. By you being in a position to start to coast, when you start to settle, when we start to get comfortable, recognize that your competitors are not doing the same thing. Your competitors are working to beat you. If you are doing well, guess what? Me as a competitor, I know you're doing well. And so they're working hard enough so they can surpass you. And even if that's not actually true, maybe in the situation, that's the mentality we should have. And that's what's actually going to push you to continue to equip yourself. Recognizing that I have to constantly do it. You brought up an industry like insurance. We all know insurance is nothing. I mean, how many times does insurance things change? Right? There's a new thing every year, every quarter. We're going to have to change this. There's new regulations and things like that. We have to be on top of your industry, right? Stop allowing your customers or your clients to seek answers elsewhere when they can get it from you. What's the excuse that you didn't have the answer that they had for you? You should know what they're seeking. You should know the questions that they have. These are very things that today you can go out and look for, right? Frequently asked questions, things that people are seeking. Whatever industry you're in, we know what people want. Be the person who's proactive enough to look those things up, do the research yourself, find the newest evidence, right? Learn to be evidence-based. Evidence-based research, right? Learning that, okay, there's research behind this, right? Learning that, seeking those things first so that you can be equipped so that when people come to you, you do have an answer. And the best way is to have the answers and answer questions that they had that they didn't ask you. You already started to bring up first. And so these are ways that we can be constant seekers of knowledge, okay? All right. One of the next thing I want to talk about is that today, a lot of times the average person who's working in the sales industry, we deal with a lack of efficiency. Okay? The lack of efficiency. Why would you have a lack of efficiency? A lack of efficiency comes from a lot of things, but a lot of it comes from the tasks that we have to do. Right? So we deal with the calls that we have to make per day, right? The emails that we have to do, right? The follow-ups, callbacks. I think, unfortunately, that with technology today, there's really no excuses why we don't automate a lot of the services that we do and need to do. And more importantly, there's a lot of free software out there, free sales tools that we should take advantage of. Once again, I'm be the first one to tell you that I have fell into the trap of sometimes when you've done things for years, you just say, that's how I do my job. That's what I've always done. But unfortunately, once again, as Don said it earlier, the most important thing is time. And if time is the most important thing, if we're inundated with concerning ourselves with some of these mundane tasks that unfortunately can be automated today, why are we? Let's use technology to free up more time. The more time you have, you can actually be talking to new prospects, actually engaging in the sales process itself, right? So I actually looked up some software. I wanted to just share with you guys some of the new software that's out here that I can. Let me see, where did I put it? Okay, cool. Okay, so these are all free CRMs. So CRMs is like, so just how do you organize your customers? How do we email them? How do we follow up? These are systems that you can use, okay?
Customer relationship management. manager.
Exactly, customer relationship manager. So the first one I would say is, let me see. These are all the best free CRMs of 2023. So the first one they said was Zoho. Zoho, they say overall is the best one overall. This is actually the one I use as well. Zoho, the reason I use Zoho, one, it's free. It's free software, right? Two, it integrates with all my devices. So I happen to be an Apple user. Anyone who's an Android user, I don't know why you have that, but let me stop. But no, but more importantly, it's important to know that you want to use systems that can go from device to device, right? So sometimes there are a lot of software that only works on your phone or only works on your PC or only works on your Mac. So obviously, I'm an iPhone user, so I want something that can work on my phone, my iPad, and my Mac. And Zoho is great for that. Another one is called Monday. They call it Monday.com. Monday.com. And Monday.com is best for customization. So when they talk about customizations, which is really cool that I love about technology, you're probably the best person to talk about this. But in terms of customization, you want to be able to. How do you want your layout done, right? Do you want your prospects on your left, your funnels, what stage they're at in the funnel? How it looks and appears on the screen. They say Monday.com would be the best in terms of being able to customize that, right? The next one they say is Engage Bay. Engage Bay. They say this one is best for live chats. This is best for customization. Customize. Okay, so literally within the chat, right? When you have your prospects already in there, you can click them and actually go into doing a live chat within their ecosystem, which makes that pretty cool. The next one is, let me see. Okay, a popular one is HubSpot. I think a lot of people probably know HubSpot. They said HubSpot is the best because of its automation system. So that's dealing with, you know that you're supposed to call somebody or send an email next week. With HubSpot, you can tell the computer, you can basically tell the system to say, I want, in 2 weeks, I want a follow-up email sent to all my prospects, right? Or every month. You could tell it of birthdays, right? Birthdays, anniversaries, set up an email, set up a call, give you workflow tips. So, okay, I'm gonna make sure I'm gonna call them today. Or I need to do some research before I call that person. Set up the notes, send those emails as well. So HubSpot will be great for things like that. And lastly, the last one that I have it's called Tricks, I believe. 24, yeah. And this one was put because of your ability to have unlimited users. So a lot of times, if it's free, usually you can only get one user. Sorry.
So, say what you wrote there. I'm not.
Oh, which one? Here?
What the name of the.
Oh, it's called Tricks.
2.4, is that?
Yeah, sorry. 2.4, yes. Yeah, it's Tricks 2.4. Yeah, Tricks 2.4. You got that? So for unlimited users. So once again, why is this good? We need to start to move to the modern age and use technology for our own benefit, right? How many times are you writing emails? But every time you have to write an email, you're writing it. it takes time to do that, right? I know that sometimes, like, okay, we do want to make customized, I get it, but they have the systems there already. Like, literally, you can create an email, and then it will create a template, and it creates that template. Obviously, you'll change the name, change the systems. Obviously, things you need to change, you could change, but at least having templates already for you is going to shave some time off. All right. Okay. Boom. All right. So, okay. So the next thing we want to do is address the status quo bias. Okay, the status quo bias. So look, so naturally, when you think of the sales process, most people think of the sales process in a linear process, right? It's either the person either goes with me, you're either gonna take me, or you're gonna go with my competitor, right? And unfortunately, there's actually a third option, which is do nothing, right? But in reality is that they don't make a decision. Okay, they don't make a decision, no decision. Okay, and the point is that the status quo bias is that most people, unfortunately, studies say almost 40% of the time, the person didn't choose you or your competitor, they just didn't change. And so what does that mean? So what we can do as salespeople is recognize that in reality, if we're dealing with a population or a section of your salespeople, of your client base, that 40% actually don't make decisions, then we need to start to invest time into making them understand that the status quo bias actually exists. Does that make sense? So you introduce to them that, let me tell you that, and unfortunately, a lot of people in your position, most of the time, unfortunately, the reason why most people end up not hitting their goals in the end of the day is because they actually choose to do nothing. So one of the main things I want you to know, client A or client B, is that regardless, I believe that obviously I have the best solution, but I believe that regardless, you need to make a decision because A, B, and C. Explaining to them what's going to happen because they're not going to make a decision, right? And once again, that makes us have to be a better prepared, right? As people or salespeople, or when you're serving your client, the best way you can serve your client is to actually tell them what's going to happen because they're not going to do this action right now. I'm looking at you, so I'm sort of thinking about real estate. And breaking down the people why, making them understand waiting is never going to be the key for me to actually get a better investment over time, right? And so you have to be able to explain to me that by me waiting, hoping, once again, right, living on hopium, that the interest rates are going to drastically change in the next year or two, or prices of things are going to go down, which they never do, right? And that us recognizing that. So us ability to recognize the status quo bias exists, right? People, almost 40% of the people you're going to deal with, they're not going to make a decision. So you have to make sure that they know that the worst thing you can do is to do nothing, right? So let them understand the pain of staying the same. Okay, so we have to know those stats, right? So us as salespeople, us in our industry, you should know the problem if someone does nothing. And make sure that we invest time into putting this part into existence, right? Okay. Okay. Next, I think another thing is that what people end up doing, okay, is us focusing on unconsidered needs. We as salespeople, we have to recognize that a lot of people are going to come to you. When they come to you, they're going to tell you their problems. They're going to tell you their needs, right? And unfortunately, we're not the only people they're going to go to, right? They're going to actually go to your competitors as well, right? And think about that they're coming to you, telling their needs to you. And so what we naturally do is we cater our solutions to their needs, right? For what they tell us. What they perceive as their needs, right? And obviously we know that most of the time the customers are wrong, right? You guys should know that. A lot of times they don't know. They don't know enough about it. That's why they're in their problem. And so once again, being an expert, recognizing that, make sure that they understand the unconsidered needs. Right? So be the person who's different. You're going to be able to differentiate yourself from your competitors because your competitors are catering their needs exactly to what they're saying. Be a person who says, I want to introduce the unconsidered needs, right? I always say ask permission. You always ask permission, but you tell someone, hey, would it be okay if I let you know about some things maybe you didn't consider that would actually help you hit your goals, right? Now you've introduced them in a way that someone says, well, why wouldn't I want that, right? Be the person who recognizes some of those unconsidered needs that your customers are dealing with so that you can present yourself as, one, you differentiate yourself from your competitors, but two, you're actually giving them a chance to, you're not becoming a tape recorder. You're not like everybody that they're hearing. You're actually becoming more like an advisor. Okay? Because you're introducing things they didn't think about. So being able to be prepared enough to recognize the things, you probably didn't think of these things that are actually going to end up hitting your goal. So making sure we use unconsidered needs. And the last one I think is pretty cool is the last one is called the hammock effect. Okay, so the hammock effect deals with when we're communicating with people. Most people, if you have great charisma, you have energy, you're able to keep people's attention. But the hammock effect breaks down that most people, in the beginning, let's just maybe if we did a chart, right? Mm-hmm. Let's say it's almost like a bell. Right? So in the beginning, when you first start, people are probably listening to 70% of what you're saying. And most people remember everything at the end, right? Because they're like, it's almost over, right? So they probably hear 100% of everything you ended with. But unfortunately, in the middle, it's roughly about 20% they're understanding or even listening to. So there's a portion in the middle of your sales process that you're losing your customers. This is proven, right? So what can we do? This is where we have to, you try to use things, you create some spikes in listening by doing some type of grabbers to grab their attention, right? And I'll introduce one of those, a technique is called the number plays. Okay, how it works is you say, you know what, Mr. Customer or Mrs. Customer, can I show you something? While you're talking to them, all of a sudden say, you know what, can I show you something? Once again, it changes the mood. What is that? What do you mean? Of course you can, but by you setting up, by asking the question, you're creating them to, creating a new intrigue, creating a spike moment in your sales process, right? And then what you do is that what we want to do is that you just write 3 numbers, okay? 3 numbers. These 3 numbers should represent something to them, to your industry, or somehow how you're going to curve them. I'm just going to make something up right now, but it'll make sense for you, right? Let's just say, I'll say 3, 40, and 100. So you'll put that down on the piece of paper. Now they're like, what's that on the piece of paper, right? And you can say, customer, there are usually 3 outcomes that's going to occur because people are not going to do what we're here to do today. 1, someone is, most people are going to choose to stay with their old company, right? 2, they're going to choose to change their company. They're going to try something new. And thirdly, you can be innovative and try to create your own thing, right? Doing these things, we have to know that in the end of the day, when people don't do anything, 40% of sales are going to be lost. What do you think you could do if you can increase your sales 40%? Could you tell me something that you would be able to change and how you would be able to change maybe hitting your goals if you could at least recover 40% of the customers you lost during this process? And let me tell you, 40% out of your loss, and anything that you lost that you recover, ma'am, is 100% of that is going to be going into your pocket. This is what we want you to do. So I sort of just tried to come up with this on the fly, but what you're doing is creating a way to shift the mode within your talk, but creating a new spike, but making them pay attention. But this is where us being prepared and cater these numbers directly to your client or to your person will give you ability to have a bit of a wow moment in their head. They'll say, okay, wow, I like that, right? And sometimes that's what we need to do in the middle of our presentations to keep them engaged, to keep them what you're doing. So guys, these were 5 things that we can do today or in the near future that can drastically change your outcomes, change your sales abilities, and hopefully change you profitability. So thank you, and once again.
That was great. That was excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You got
that
you?
off.
Cool.
Yes, thank you so much. You know, for those that are taking notes, and by the way, the session I'm doing is a perfect connection with this. There's a great line that I love to live by, which says, if you always do what you've always done, you will always get what you've always got.
Come on,
Now, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm not making a judgment call on anything. What I'm saying is if you like where you are, then don't change a thing. There's a very good chance nothing is gonna happen, right? If you like where you are, if things are going great, don't change. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Mm-hmm. However, if for whatever reason you're not necessarily happy exactly where you are, what are you going to change to get there? I'm not saying we're the answer, but I'm saying what are you going to change to get there? So again, if you always do what you've always done, you will always get what you've always gotten. So that kind of is that play on words that reinforces the idea that change, if desirable, if the goal is to change something, then you have it within you to do that, and that's likely on the other side of something different. Something that you're doing different. These are great, great, wonderful tools to use. My session is going to be called Making Money from the Spent, S-P-E-N-T. And you're going to see where the play comes in very quickly, because one of the things that Dave was talking about is very much in line with this. Because we're convinced, right? We're absolutely convinced that when somebody's talking to somebody else and say, I'm going to go with XYZ company, we're absolutely convinced we've lost the business. All too many times, and it's interesting that the psychology of sales talks about this idea of finality. We're convinced that because they didn't go with us 2 years ago, they're never ever going to go with us again. That because the circumstances back then it was a no, and it's never going to be a yes. Right. And one of the things we talk about in the session, Making Money from the Spent, and for those that are taking notes, write this down. Circumstances change. Yes. Answers change. Mm-hmm. Circumstances change. Answers change. Let me give you a little bit of recent history. There was a time not too long ago when paper towels and toilet paper was very hard to come by. Right? If you remember, kind of during COVID. My dad would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. He would be down at the Kroger's in Dearborn Heights, Michigan. Because from 5 o'clock to 6 o'clock, they opened it for the senior citizens. They could go in and shop that were afraid of COVID. The idea was that they would segregate a time, normal business hours, but from 5 to 6, you had to be a senior because they were the ones most likely to be affected by COVID. Correct. And my dad would literally be down there at 4:45, so he was the first person in line. And at that point in time, the two things he would always go to was toilet paper and paper towels. Now, just my mom and dad at home, right? They have enough toilet paper to take care of themselves to the year 3000. Dad kept buying it, and my mom is like, wait a second, we don't need 24 rolls. We've got like 900 rolls of toilet paper. I think we're covered, right? But the idea ultimately is times change, circumstances change. Now, hypothetically, go back to that time. And if I took up one of my pickups and I put it in the parking lot, right? Because now at that time, when all the seniors went in, they wiped everything out. My dad took every one that he could get his hands on. He can get two 24 packs. So when I went, or most the non-senior community went, they went to the racks that were empty. Well, imagine hypothetically, I was in the parking lot, and I had my pickup, and on the side of my pickup it was toilet paper, $1 a roll. $1 a roll. Paper towel, $1 a roll. Now keep in mind, you could buy what, 4, 5, 6 rolls for $4 or $5? And I'm selling it at $1 a roll, probably 3, 4 times legitimately what it is. You think people might have bought some and they were happy to buy some?
Definitely.
If I would have told you 2 years ago, you'll pay $1 a roll for toilet paper, you'd be like, you're out of your mind. You're crazy. I would have sold out every one that I got. And people were like, can I buy more? Do you have more? Can I come back tomorrow and buy more as well? Circumstances change, answers change. So the idea of making money from the spent is based on the psychological belief that we have this finality of ideology. And the terrible thing about it is we carry that on all the time. We make these sacred cow beliefs in our mind that are absolutely wrong. And it's interesting that when you look at a lot of the things that we did, I'll give you a great example. I love using this one, dating. Right? Everybody had their first date. And historically, your first date is when you're young, you're a kid, you're probably in your teens, you're socially awkward, and it probably didn't go very well. And you don't think to yourself, that's it, this one's done, I'm done, I'm never dating again. It's going to be Father Don, and that's it, I'm done, no women in my life forever, never, never, right? Well, that's stupid. Right? Most people don't marry the first person that they date. And the interesting thing about that is they don't say, oh my God, that's it. This date went bad. I'm never, ever going to date again. And yet we take that same ideology and we apply that to business relationships. So this falls into a couple of different scenarios. Making money from the spent is a session that I teach that talks about how to make money from people that you're absolutely convinced you're never going to be able to. Why? Circumstances change, answers change. The person that says they can't afford a $300,000 house, well, when they win the new $1 billion lottery that's going to fire up, what, tomorrow? You think they're going to be in a different situation? Maybe that $300,000 isn't even a likelihood. Now it's $30 million? Of course it is. But we have, again, these sacred cows in our mind that are literally not true. And we are in most cases, our own worst enemy. And I see it happen over and over and over again. You'll talk to somebody and they say, oh, my roof is fine. When in reality, all their shingles are curling up and it's just a matter of time, if it hasn't happened already, that they're likely going to need a new roof. So it falls into some categorizations, right? Number one, in making money from the spent, people that we know we lost. That we know they lost. That we're convinced we know we lost them. We sell Fords, we see them 2 weeks later, they're driving a new Chevy. We know we lost them.
Got you, okay.
And yet, at that time, again, in our mind, we decide, oh, well, that's it, they bought a Ford, we're done. Right? They're never going to buy a Chevy ever again. We find that not to be true. Here's what I encourage everyone to do, and that's why a CRM is so critical. If you don't have one, these are some great no-cost options. What it does require is discipline. Most people have this history of people. If you think of all the thousands of people that you've crisscrossed over the course of your life, many of which you could have a financial relationship, many of which could be clients, many of which could refer you to people that you could ultimately do business with. The people that we know we lost, those are the best people to go after in many cases because of a thing called buyer's regret. Buyer's regret gives me a license to steal. All right? So now I'm going to give you some insight into the twisted mind of Don. All right? No, really. Because I love this. Because what I do is I assume even the person I lost that I know I lost, I love to circle back after whoever I lost it to did whatever they were supposed to do. Now, when I do keynote speaking, I'm very expensive. That's the most expensive 60 minutes these people are ever going to have. And are there people that'll do it for less expensive or free? Oh, absolutely. There's a world of people that will do it for less than I do or free. And most people are like, that's it, CPA Association didn't hire me, I'm never going to call them again. You know what I love to do? The days after that person was supposed to deliver their keynote, I love to do some research. I love to go to Facebook, and I love to do a search on CPAs of America or the CPA Association of America. And what do you think I find when they hired the cheapest guy? You think there's good things out there in the world about it? Terrible event, will never go again. The speaker was terrible. Sound was bad. Content was blah, 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 blah. Boy, I love making that next call. Because it sounds like, how'd that work out for you? You happy with your choice? When was the last person somebody bought the cheapest of the cheapest of the cheapest? They're like, oh my God, I'm so glad I bought my wife the cheapest engagement ring. I found the biggest, cheapest POS that was out there. No, of course not. But see, we're convinced that we know we lost the business, therefore we're never going to touch him again. Let the guy do the half-ass, get the cheap guy to do his roof. Contact him back after the next monsoon, after they fixed the roof. How'd that work out for you? Right? More times than not, right? The person that was convinced they got the best deal on their mortgage. And I work with a lot of mortgage companies. People will call, what's your rate for 30 years? The correct answer is what to a person that's calling you on the phone, Cindy? I have no idea what your rate is. Right? I have no idea what your finances are. I have no idea what your credit is. I have no idea your down payment. The correct answer to what is your rate to a person calling into a mortgage company should be, we don't know. But if you say we don't know, you're not going to have any more conversation. What they're going to do is keep calling until somebody says 3% for 30 years. And you're like, oh, well, they're the cheapest. I'm going to start working with them. What they don't tell you is you got to have an 850 credit score, $4 million in the bank, be on the job for 90 years, all right, and have no debt. I mean, something that no one is ever going to get to. They start the conversation with that's misleading, but people allow themselves, and they're willing to allow themselves to be misled. So number one, people that you know you lost the business. Those are the people you want to be on top of because their glaring mistake is going to be so obvious in their own mind. So obvious right when it happens. It's like the wound is always the tenderest when it's the newest. You pour salt on the open wound, it hurts like hell. Oof. Give it 3 weeks to seal up, pour salt on it, no big deal. That's number one. Now, I'm not saying be mean about it. But what I am saying is this is a perfect opportunity to communicate the mistakes that these people willingly allowed themselves to make. So that's number one. People that you know you lost. Here's the number two, and this is what David said. These are the people you think you lost. They said, we're going to go with XYZ company. And you look down and go, oh, shucks, I didn't get it. They didn't go, they don't like me, right? No, I see it happen all the time, right? People will call, Don, I'm bummed, I need a pep talk. Why? Oh, I just talked to my customer and they're going to go with the other guy. I'm like, why? Why are you bummed out? Here's what you do. You call your customer back and say, here's the deal. I'm going to call you back in 30 days. If you were happy with your choice, that's great. Good luck. Most people aren't. If you're not happy, we can still talk. Why? Buyer's regret. Most people, I don't care what you buy. You could buy the $100 million house and my wife would go in and complain about it. She'd be like, she'll tell you not the not the $99 million worth of stuff that's fabulous. She'd be like, the windows are dirty. Honey, we can fix that. Yeah, but the windows are dirty. I know. My buddy Gabe is a window company. He does fabulous work, works on all my properties. Yeah, but the windows are dirty. Gabe, get out here. Right? But the idea is that, again, we know it or we think it. If we think it, that's okay. That doesn't mean they're never going to buy from you again. Facts. But most people write them off, right? It's like if you went to a restaurant and had one bad meal. You know, there was a date and time long before Yelp, long before all the stuff that was out there, that if you had a bad meal, you'd be like, hey, we had a bad meal, that was it. we'll try back in a week, right? Everybody has a bad experience. You get a bad meal, bad fish, whatever it is. You would go back and say, hey, listen, I was here last week and my steak was a little undercooked, and hopefully if they're a solid business, they'll do something, free steak or something like that. Anyways, nowadays, oh my God, you have a bad meal. You want these people hung on a cross. You want them out of business, vilified, dead. I mean, Yelp is the worst time of my life. Really? 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 This dinner was the worst time of your life? Then you should thank your lucky stars. You had a pretty freaking good life if the worst night of your life was this dinner. Again, if we think we lost it, those are the people that absolutely stay on top of. They will find holes in whatever they bought, because I will tell you, most people are inadequate in whatever they do, right? Especially if they're seeking the lowest price. There is nothing made by man that can't be made cheaper by somebody else. Oof. But the reality is, unfortunately, they have to buy it to experience that, right? I used to love one of the things, I used to own a chain of music stores. And we used to carry a very, very substantial line of inexpensive guitars. And I had a sign on the wall that says, don't buy these. They suck. On my wall of my own store with these $200 guitars. The fact that it looks like a $3,000 guitar does not make it a $3,000 guitar. It's a $200 guitar. Don't buy these, they suck. And that's why we always had a 7-day 100% return policy. Because you're going to buy the $200 guitar. Even though the sign on the wall says these suck, you're going to buy it. And then you're going to get it home, even though the sign on the wall says what? They suck. And you're going to realize you made a bad choice. And because Don is such a philanthropic guy, I'm going to let you come back, and I'm going to give you your $200 back towards something else, that the other sign that says, these don't suck. So these were the ones that suck, and people bought them all the time. And the sign over here said, these don't suck, and that's what they eventually get to. Now, I could tell them not to, but they don't listen. They don't listen. These would be the people that sold, my competitors would sell them the $200 guitars happily. Take their $200. What would those clients never do again? They'd never go back. You sold me a crappy guitar. Yes, it was a crappy guitar. That's why it's $200 when all of these are thousands. Really? Really? Does it make that much of an effort? Again, make money from the spent. These are the people that are convinced that they never have anything. There's nothing going on. Let's keep going. We got a lot to cover. All right? Who are the prospect groups that are struggling? Find a prospect group that are struggling and befriend them. I remember, does anybody remember that 5 years ago when the news broke that Wells Fargo Bank was opening up all of these bogus accounts for people? Remember that? All right. Came out. Wells Fargo had such an oppressive policy for their employees that they had to open up a certain amount of new accounts. That these employees were literally opening up accounts for people out of the blue without their knowledge. They would open the account, they would keep it for 30 days, they'd send it to a bogus address, and then they would cancel the account, because that's the process that these employees have determined. Anyways, it broke, and they were vilified. Oh, yeah. Oh, my God, how could Wells Fargo do that? How terrible, right? Stock plummeted. I mean, there were some questions whether Wells Fargo was going to survive. Yeah, I heard that. That day, I walked into the Wells Fargo on Orchard, right here, on Oracle Road, right in front of Fry's. And I went to the bank manager, and I say, I'm going to be the best person you ever see today. And I say, I want to open an account. Here's what he said. He goes, you're kidding me. I'm like, no, I'm serious. I want to open an account. Because first of all, you're never going to do that again, right? You're never going to screw those people, so I guess that part is covered. But you are going to remember me forever. You're going to remember this face forever. You're going to tell people stories about this guy forever. Sure enough, we opened the account, and to this very day, he just recently got transferred a couple months ago. Every single time I would see him, he would now want to recant the story to whoever was in earshot about when for weeks no one opened a new account, but the day that it fell, I did. There are certain struggling industries that need to make a change. They need to make a change. Whatever it is, you find the people that are struggling, people buy emotionally. They justify it intellectually, but they buy emotionally. You find you find the places where there is an emotional component. Making a sale to an emotionally charged person was fine. I could charge people $2 for a roll of toilet paper. Why? Because when you got no toilet paper in your house, my $2 roll is going to look pretty interesting. Now, you may not be happy about it. You might begrudge purchasing it for $2. You're still going to do it.
Yes, you will.
Right? You don't care. Why? Because your circumstances require you to do it. We all have a version of that. Somebody gets transferred, and they're moving to Tucson, and they have to buy a house.
Right.
Well, they might not be happy that the prices are high. They might not be happy the interest rates are high. They might not be happy for blah, 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 but we don't care. They have to do it. There are certain industries that are always in that struggle mode. And when you identify who they are, I will tell you that you've got a virtually untapped gold mine of people. Cindy Wilson in the back is the smartest person in the room. Absolutely. Why? Because she does reverse mortgages, which are going to be the #1 thing for an aging population. I just turned 62 today. So you and I are going to talk this week. I don't have a house yet. It's probably going to be in Colorado when the kids move, right? But I don't care. Why? Because she has something that virtually nobody has in an industry that loves what she's selling. Find things that are struggling and go to them. You specialize working, David, in working in the nonprofit world. Is there a good chance that nonprofits are struggling now?
Oh, definitely.
Absolutely. That they have to do something or want to do something. They have to do something.
They have to.
That's the marketplace you want to go to. You want to be in with the people that, again, not in a mean take advantage of them way.
Right.
But you want to be in the market that has to do things. And again, making money from the spent. People are saying, you just signed up 2 new listings in the last 2 weeks. In the same industry, in real estate, where people say, nobody's buying houses. Are you having that experience? Yes. The people are buying houses. Right, they're absolutely right. She's a client of mine, by the way. Right, it's all about me. Right. Shameless. All right, let's keep going. Yep. We help them solve their problems. We are problem solvers looking for problems to solve. The people that are out there that are looking, that have problems, they need a solution. And yet we don't go after the people with problems. In fact, in a lot of cases, we try to sugarcoat them. Oh, don't worry, it'll get better. No, it's not. I tell people all the time, they're just waiting for the next shoe to drop. I used to love one of my guys in Michigan, by the way, Mitch, I should tell you, that is in roofing. He has a little door hanger. You know what a door hanger is, everybody? Yeah. It's that little thing, it's got the hook on, it fits over your physically over your knob, right? And he would drive down the street, and he would just look. Now, in Michigan, you have different kinds of roofs. Obviously, here, a lot of flat ones, but in Michigan, it's the shingles. And he would look for roofs that have obvious damage, curled shingles, things like that. And he would write in his door hanger, you know, hey, this is my phone number, just a matter of time before you need us. Right? I was driving down the street, you got some serious problems with your roof. Just a matter of time before you need us. I figured I'd give you the number now. He would get people and says, what do you mean? Because they don't look at their roof. They certainly don't look with the idea of a guy who's been doing it 20, 30 years. They don't know what they don't know, exactly what David said. So when they say, well, what do you mean? Well, stand out on your sidewalk, and you see on the bottom corner where all those things are curled up? Well, the reason that they're curled up is blah-bitty, blah-bitty, blah-bitty. So here's the thing right now. When those are curled up, you already have water in your attic. That water is looking for a place to go. So even though it may come in here, it's gonna drip out here. So it's probably pooling in your attic as you speak. But you don't know that because you don't go up in your attic because you're smart.
Come on.
And it's amazing how we make the market with people that are struggling. If you find people that have issues and you have problems, you can always make that sale. All right? Better or worse? Better or worse? I love to tell people when I talk to them, Mr. Jones, you know, I can appreciate that you made a hard decision. You're going to go with XYZ company. Would you be okay if I called you back in 90 days? Just to get a sense, just for my own personal individual survey, what your level of happiness was with your purchase? I've asked that 100 times. People are like, sure. And I cannot tell you, again, how many times I've called people back. They were unhappy. Why? Because they made the decision wrongly. That's why when somebody asks you for a quote, I want you to ask this question. Would you like it to include a price? Would you like it to include a price? Now, when they say, well, yes, of course, then the next follow-up is, so you're not looking for a quote, you're looking for a price. Because if you're looking for a quote, you should go to the guy that has the most experience. You should be making your decision like this. How many years you been doing this? How many flat roofs have you done in your career? Right? How many trucks do you have access to? How many full? You should be basing your decision on capacity, not on price. So when somebody asks you for a quote, your quote should not have a price in it. It should be your CV. It should say all the reasons why you're professional in what you do. When you ask somebody, would you like your quote to include a price? That gives you the segue for the conversation. Ooh. So you're actually looking for a price, not a quote. You're looking for a price. And I will tell you right up front, Mrs. Jones, we're not going to be the cheapest. In fact, there's probably a pretty good chance that I'm going to be 50% higher than everybody else. Now, most people would never say that. They're like, oh my God, I could never say that. Okay, well then don't say that. But I will tell you that if you know what you're doing and it's going to take $10,000 to fix, and somebody who doesn't know what they're doing says it's going to take $3,000 to fix, do you think they're still going to have their problem after they get done? Yep. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It usually gets more expensive.
Absolutely, sure, because now I got to fix the stuff that they wrecked.
Exactly.
Right? I got to pull off their crap on top of it. But nobody ever says that, right? Because again, in the ideology of making money from the spent, they assume that they don't have $10,000, I got to figure out a $3,000 solution. No, you don't. It is what it is. Whether they like it or not makes no difference. It is what it is. The marketplace right now, you can't change the past. There's no guarantee of a future. The only thing you have to deal with is the present. Mm-hmm. All right? I want to keep going because I want to make sure I get at least through a good portion of these things. So better or worse, when I'm talking to someone, is it going to be better or worse? Because your low bid is probably going to make it worse. Mrs. Jones, I'm telling you, I've been doing this for a long time. I really, in my heart of heart, and if you want to be gutsy, say this. Would you be okay if I took off my salesperson hat for a moment?
Yes.
Hold on. Acting is selling. If you can't act, you can't sell.
Let's go.
Would you be okay if I took off my salesperson hat for one moment? And here's what they're going to say, having done this a million times.
Of course.
Yes.
Of course.
I've been doing this a long time. Please. Let me share with you what has to happen on your roof. We have to take all this stuff off, which is going to take 3 guys, definitely the better part of 3 days to do. Now, I don't know how much you make. I don't know how much your husband makes, but it's probably not $12 an hour. It's probably going to be more than that. Then we're going to have to do this. Then we're going to have to do this. Then we're going to have to do this. And there's a very good chance, based on, again, on my opinion, that's based on years of experience, that you'll still have your problem. The problem now becomes it's going to be worse. Because now not only is it not fixed, but somebody's attempt to fix it now makes it more expensive for me to correct it. No different from somebody who doesn't know how to work on your car engine. They go in there and they start dorking around and they make the matters worse. Now nobody ever says that because they don't want to break the salesperson role, right? I'm the salesperson, they're the customer. That's why when I say, can I take my salesperson hat off, is giving me permission now to have a face-to-face. And then here's what you say. Would you be okay if I contacted you back 2 weeks after they got finished? And we can figure out what has to happen to really take care of the problem. Oof. Now, is that gutsy? Absolutely it is, because you're telling them the truth. You're not telling them a lie. If I'm telling them the truth, then I have no problem being gutsy. Because what I believe is, and by the way, every industry is the same. Every industry is the same. I've got a professional photographer. And I would make sure that she includes in every one of her conversations, especially with dealing with weddings, to say, this has to be 100% perfect. You can't do a redo. You don't get remarried the next day if your pictures are terrible. Think about that. You're talking to a bride who's waited her entire life for that. People buy emotionally. Yes. They justify it intellectually, but they buy emotionally. You've got one chance of making it perfect. When was the last time you can show me an example of one chance making it perfect? One chance of making it perfect. Right now, NASA has a mandate that will not allow them to accept low bid. You know that? Low bid. And my brother-in-law is part of SpaceX. They have similar, keep in mind that, you look at the low bid of, the Challenger blew up for an O-ring that was a low bid O-ring. they determined in their vast wisdom that that's what took down the Challenger, was the low bid on a $20 part. Think about that. When you're talking to somebody. Now, most people never talk about that. They'll be like, oh my God, I couldn't talk about that. Okay, well then don't. Don't, do it your way. Again, make money from the spent. You're so convinced they're not going to spend more. You're so convinced they've went with someone. You're so convinced, and again, what we find when we autopsy these relationships is that's not true. All the things that we are convinced that happened never actually happened. All right, I'm going to keep going. All right. They have fewer options. People that have tried all of the loosey-goosey, cheap, low bid ways of doing things now have less options. They went to a less experienced real estate person. They're coming out for a move. They're going to be here for 3 days, and they got to find a house in 3 days. And the person that they came across has got virtually no experience. Doesn't really know where to go, doesn't know how to get good prices, things like that. They got 3 days to do it. Who do you want to trust? The person that's been doing it 3 years or the person that's doing 30 years? When you've got 3 days to do it. You've got to put together a financing deal in an afternoon. Do you want to go to Cindy, who's been doing it forever and ever and ever, or somebody who decided they wanted to be in mortgages? Somebody like Joan, who's been doing insurances for a long time, has forgotten more than I would ever know about the insurance world. Who do you want? Exactly. And that's why when I come, I always say, how much time can you waste on your bad mistakes? Right? How much time do you really have to be able to make mistakes? If you've got endless time, right? If you can come out every week for the next 52 years, well, fine, you can get a terrible person. Right? Even the blind squirrel gets a nut every now and then. Maybe they might find the perfect house. But the people that have made multiple mistakes, now they have fewer and fewer options. You know, there's a great show called Botched. If you've never seen it, I encourage you to go see it. Oh, yeah. It's a plastic surgeon. They're on the Discovery Channel. And the interesting thing about it was, and here's these two very world-renowned, well-known guys. And they would talk to the people that had these botched, and they're terrible, right? Oh, my God, heart goes out to these people. These botched plastic surgeries. And it was interesting as they were talking to them prior to trying to correct the mistakes every other people make. They asked them, well, what made you decide, to do this? And here's what one woman said. They were running a special. They were running a special on facelifts. Think about that. They were running a special on facelifts, and that's what made her do it. Now, it was terrible. I never watched the part 2 to see if I'm sure they were able to fix it, or they wouldn't have had a part 2, I'm sure, right? But the idea ultimately is when these people have fewer options, you want to be able to point that out to them. Again, making money from the spent is communicating to them that their options dwindle, right? And after you've tried all the cheap ways to do something, now you're back where you should have started, right? You bought the $200 guitar, right? And it was crappy because I told you it was crappy. But then you bought the $250 guitar thinking that an extra $50 would make it 10 times more. No, it makes it a little bit better. It's just less crappy. And that's why when we have this, you have less options. The more mistakes you make, the less options you have in which to correct them. So now when you had that facelift, there isn't a whole lot of money and time that you have left, and there isn't a lot of other people that have the level of experience to correct their screw-up.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's why you always want to have a dermatologist next to a tattoo parlor, right? Because, no, really, because when you make the mistake of the tattoo, you can go right next door and they can laser it off. Because again, if you think of all the things that people do, stupid choices they make, now they limit what their next step is. You're making money from the spent because again, you're convinced, rightly or wrongly, that there's no business there. You absolutely are wrong. There's a ton of business there. Every person that said no to your roofing services, they're the best person to go back to. How'd that work out for you? Now, only one of two things could happen. They could say, you know what, they did a great job, no leaks, and we're happy. And that's possible. But I would probably venture to guess you're going to hear more on the other side. Well, they didn't totally fix it, but it's better than it was. All right? Well, if you're okay with that, so now you only have a little leak as opposed to a bigger leak, right? But hey, people, it's their God-given right to be stupid.
I hear it a lot.
Yes. Yeah, and that's why, and from a selling point of view, if you look at all the people, and by the way, these are all warm leads. These are people you've already talked to, so when you call them back, they know who you are. They're likely going to maybe talk to you, answer your call, respond to your text message, respond to your email. These are relationships that you already have. Making money from the spent, people that you were convinced you would never do business with. People, even though they said, we'll never do business with you again. Doesn't make any difference. Circumstances change. Answers change. All the things that we were convinced that we were never going to do during the 2008 financial crisis, during COVID, all of these things that we were convinced were never, ever, ever, ever going to happen. And yet they did. And now we have a whole different paradigm to look at, because if it happened once, it's going to happen again. It happened once. It's going to happen again. We will have, mark my words, we will have some worldwide pandemic that's going to bring the world to its knees again, because we crossed a line that you can't go back with. I remember, I think the best example, and I'm not making light of an incredibly important, I want to make sure we stay on time. I'm not making light of an incredibly important circumstance. But when we dropped our first atomic bomb in Japan, at Hiroshima, that was 10 times larger than any bomb we ever exploded. We had no idea. If you go back into the history, and with Oppenheimer being out there, if you've seen the movie, it makes reference to that. They really had no idea what was going to happen. They knew it was bigger than what we blew up before. They had no idea how big it was going to really be. The death, destruction, they had no idea. And I remember hearing old newsreels of the president saying, oh my God, we'll never do this again. We'll never do, this is so destructive and so dangerous, and it took so much life immediately and instantaneously. We will never do this again. What happened a few days later, which, by the way, the anniversary is coming up in a few days.
Nagasaki.
Exactly. We dropped a bigger one again. Even bigger than the first one. You have certain lines that can't be crossed, and that's why, again, circumstances change, answers change. So while we're convinced that we're never going to do something, I always say never say never. Go back, work with the people. Come on down, David. Work with the people that you're working with. Go back through your CRM. If you don't got a CRM, go back through your day planner. Who did you talk to 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, that for whatever reason just dropped off your radar? You're convinced they went with somebody else. You know they went with somebody else. You think they went with somebody else. Yeah. Resurrect them. Hey, Bob, you and I were looking at a house a couple years ago, and I know that you said you found one that you like with somebody else. Whatever happened with that? Whatever happened with that? I mean, that's a fair question. I mean, to me, that's not a reason. Whatever happened with that? What I think you're going to find is the horror stories. They're not going to call you and say, oh, my God, I wish I went with you. They should. They never do that. But when you reach out to them, then you're going to hear the horror stories. Even about something they absolutely love. Even if it's about something that they absolutely, their dream house, their dream cruise, their dream car, whatever it is, that buyer's regret is so pervasive, and that's all we need to create that little modest wedge to be able to reintroduce ourselves in the next selling system. So, David, what do you think?
Yeah, no, it was amazing. I love this. I used to work at O'Reilly in Chevrolet.
Oh, yes.
And, one of the things was, how many times people go try to buy a car and they say, you know what, no way, this is too much. This is not good. They leave, drop the table, leave, and how many times did those same people have to come back? Unfortunately, you think that we're not giving you a good price, then you go out, try to look for other places. I don't want to name the other places, shame them, but unfortunately, sometimes you think there's a prevailing thought there's always a better deal somewhere else, which is true, but it doesn't mean you will actually get it. And therefore, you've already spent the time on the table breaking it down for them, and eventually, how many times did those customers come back? It was amazing. And the cool thing with dealerships, like your customer's your customer for like 2 or 3 months. So
right.
you automatically
Yeah,
get that customer
yeah,
back.
yes.
And, you know, and just seeing that. So I definitely lived this out so many times.
Well,
But-
we've all seen that.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all had a version of that. Somebody says, whoa, that's way too much. I'd never do this.
Yeah.
2 weeks later, they're calling. It's like, hey, can we get together again? The nice thing about it is that conversation, the sale is fast, it's easy, it's simple, and it's always at a higher price. And you don't even have to fight them for it.
Yeah.
It's fast, it's easy, it's simple, it's at a higher price. Again, I always tell people, go out and look. Go look. The beauty of the internet and your ears and your eyes, go out and look. If there's legitimately something better, go for it. The only thing that I ask is that you'd be willing to, you and I, to have a conversation in a couple weeks, and you can share with me what your experience has been. And most people are very willing to do that. But again, there is no final. There is no. There is no never work with you again. No. In fact, what I find in a lot of cases when I kind of resurrect these relationships, here's what I hear. I wish I would have listened to you. I wish I would have gone with you. I wish I would have done more research on the person that we hired. I wish that we would have, and I hear all these things, and then now my price just went up. In the back of my mind, my price is now more expensive, and I never have to fight for it. Again, making money from the spend. So let's go back in a bit. What'd you get from today?
Oh, on just the thought that you lost the sale. That for me, I think it could be a charity networking opportunity. It could be a business networking opportunity.
Absolutely.
And or a fitness networking opportunity.
I'll take all of them.
Those three things, and then just on what you were just talking about. In that, may I have a conversation with you about your experience in 2 weeks? And, so right before the call, I resend my contact information, link to our website, and I remind them after our conversation, that we get 100% of our work from referrals.
Absolutely.
And if you have the opportunity, please forward this to someone else.
Yeah, I love that. Again, even though we're convinced somebody else got it, and we don't know that, but we think that might be the case, or they're like, oh no, we could never spend $3,000. Make money from the spent. They eventually, I mean, you're smart. Your pricing is very fair. You're not, it's not like somebody's going to do your quality work for half. And again, that's the thing. Again, making money from the spent is we have these beliefs in our mind, and there is no zero. There is no ultimate no. Cindy, what you got?
To call those clients, I never really call them back. If they leave me, I let them go. I never really call them, check in on how they've done it. I mean, if they completed with another person. So that's good advice.
Yeah. Well, I love that. And that's not being mean. You just have to tell them ahead of time. So, Mrs. Jones, if I have something come across even though you're going to go with XYZ company, if I have something come across my desk that I think would be a benefit to you, would you be okay if I called you? I said that 1,000 times, right? And then when you call her a year in the future, 2 years in the future, you say, Mrs. Jones, remember we were sitting at your kitchen table and I said if I had something come across my desk that I thought would be of interest to you, I actually had that. Do you have a few moments? And that's the way you resurrect the sale. Even though, again, they went with somebody else. That other person's not calling them after 2 years. They make the sale and most people just abandon you. You make the sale and you just neglect them, which makes it so much easier for us to get them back. Yeah, call them back. Look for all the ones, the quotes, that's why the day planner is such a great thing. Who did you talk to on this day 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago that was so important at that time that they could have become a client of yours or were a lost client of yours. But that's a perfect person to resurrect and say, we met 3 years ago yesterday. And blah, 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 blah. It wasn't right. You work with XYZ company. We actually have some things that might be of interest to you. Don't know if you're in the interest for a mortgage, but I think that this might be of value. Do you have a few moments?
And
that's how you resurrect them.
And so even like with the utilization of the CRMs, you have a pool you said that were not customers. Now you have a new pool of places to look at, that's warm leads to you.
Absolutely, and that's why I always tell people you want to have two people together that join at the hip, a mortgage person and a real estate person. Because the the real estate person always wants more. Real estate is like boats, right? When I bought a 30-foot boat in Michigan, more than I ever thought I would put into the water ever. The thing is, when you buy a boat, as you're signing the papers on the boat, you're looking over your shoulder at the boat twice the size that you really want.
Right.
So as I'm throwing myself into debt beyond my wildest dreams, I'm looking over my shoulder at and my boat was more than my house, and I'm looking over my shoulder at the boat twice as big. Real estate's the same way. Right? It's almost like they settle on the $1 million house, but they really want the $2 million house.
Right.
Here's how you feed together, right? You find the $2 million house that they want after they bought the $1 million house 24 months ago.
Ooh.
You already work it out with Cindy and you say, hey, listen, Bob, I know it's only been 2 years, but I know that your wife loved this. I actually came across a house that has this. I took the liberty of contacting my mortgage partner.
Oof.
You can actually get that right now, should you decide, for X. That's called making the market. You take a person who's not even in the market. If you called Mrs. Zavis out of the blue and said she could have bigger, more expensive, and better, even if she doesn't want and is very happy with what she had, this is what she's going to do. This place is a piece of shit. I'm going there. Literally. And the kidding thing about it is all of your spouses, right? Men, and I'm not being sexist or anything like that, but men, if you have wives, this is the way they think. If they think something is better, whatever you have now sucks. And you can't imagine living one more day in this crap hole. Right? It's $1 million crap hole, but you can't imagine one more day. We call that making the market. But you have to do that. That's why that relationship is so critical. On the other side, the mortgage person that just did the mortgage for $1 million house goes back to their people 2 years in the future and says, hey, Bob, I know that we just got the house, and maybe I'm talking off turn right now, but I remember you saying you really wanted a 6-car garage because you like to fix up cars. I have an associate of mine that literally just came, what's that?
They need money.
Yeah, exactly. I just had an associate of mine just brought up one that's got a 6-car garage. I don't know if you're in the market, but if you'd like, I'll send it over to you, and who knows, maybe you are, maybe you're not.
Wow.
We call that making the market.
Nice.
And again, we're convinced, well, they just bought a house from me 2 years ago. They're not going to buy another one. Oh, you're wrong. Most boaters buy a new boat every second season. Right? I would have, had I not sold my boat because the wife and daughter were sick when they went below into the cabins, I would have had my twice bigger, I would have found a way. I'd be selling drugs on the side or something, right? I would have had it. Why? Because if you want it enough, you're going to find a way.
Yeah, that's it.
So, Simona, what'd you get from today?
I like the CRM, and then also just if a client walks away, just following back up with them later on.
Absolutely. But you got to tell them, Bob, I appreciate the opportunity you gave me. I'm glad that at least we had the opportunity to be on deck. Can I ask you a question? Would you be okay if I followed up with you in a couple, maybe 4 or 5 months, see what your experience is? And maybe you got something, maybe you didn't, right? But I want to make sure that we keep kind of going with the momentum that we've got. I've said that, again, 1,000 times. Everybody says yes. Why would they say no? You bring value to the relationship. What you got?
I liked your initial diagram of showing the market and.
Oh, you like that, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes...
Changes your perspective.
Well, people
on
freak
what's
out when they see
available.
that,
Yeah.
right? I got my real estate agent clients and they're like, oh my God, the market's gonna fall. And I'm like, no, it's not. Again, the market's high. So whatever you do, what was the market at the biggest time you had the market? If it was really, and I said 100 million, it's probably more, right? So if here's a $100 million market, here is your tiny hairline sliver of that market. Even if the market went down by 50%, if it went from 100 million to 50 million, you only had this. You still got, 40 million, $49 million to go to get it. And that's why, again, even if the market goes down, that doesn't mean that we don't go up. Right. There are people still buying. There may be less, but we had such an infinitesimal amount of the market to start with that we can grow 100 times our size. But when people get that, it does change their perspective because they see it as a diminishing market. What I'm saying is regardless of the market is diminishing, your portion of it now is so small, you've got almost unlimited growth. And that's why when everybody's standing on the sidelines, and like we talked about in the beginning, right? That analysis paralysis. Everybody becomes the groundhog, and everybody wants to hide. No, I don't want to spend any money now. The gas is going up, and it's been up like a quarter in a week or something like that. And they think it's going to go higher, and interest rates are up, and hey, now's not a good time to buy a washer and dryer, and you sell your stuff on all that. Right? What do you think? Home Depot is going, well, I guess we're not going to sell any washers and dryers now. No, they're like, fine, slash the price, give them rebates, call the manufacturers, look, nobody's buying washers. What are you going to do? Well, okay, we're going to give them a $500 rebate, or you buy one and you get one for half off. They'll figure out a way for the people that are in the market, right? When the real estate market fell in 2008, the people that were smart were the people that were buying. Because I got an apartment building for like nothing that it would have been 3 times more, but they had to get out of it. So what'd you get?
Well, when I came through that door, I came very easily. Now with all these ideas, I don't know if I will be able to get out of it.
My head is so large with knowledge.
Yeah.
Shh, no.
Well, number one, what you started to change our mentality. That is such a humongous opportunity. Obviously, the pie chart just became thinner and thinner from what I know and the things I can do. I do have a couple of questions.
Yeah, fire away.
I do have a couple of clients, and this is what we need to address too.
Sure.
This is a couple. She wants a house. He looks for every reason not to buy a house.
Okay.
House. So I showed him plenty of homes. And everything had a problem. Everything.
Of course.
For him, and she is like desperate. This is perfect. At the end, we submitted an offer, but we got outbid.
Okay.
There was another option that they had, and he wouldn't take it because it was going to cost him $50 more a month.
Right.
So it's got
But the guy loses.
And yes.
Yes,
And
guy loses,
the lease
period.
Expired in August. They
Right.
could have gotten a home and closed by the end of August. So
Right.
he said, "Well, we're gonna rent one more year."
Right.
And I'm like, "How do you?" And she's extremely disappointed, sad.
Sure.
Because she was ready. She's ready to go. She's like,
Right.
"I want this house."
Yes.
So how do
Do you
deal
know
with
a
you
divorce
have
lawyer?
to-
Well, hold on. But if you
This has got me.
feel it, say it.
Yeah.
If you feel it, say it. You do no value blowing smoke at somebody. Here's what I'd say, not you, me. Mr. Jones, you're never going to find a house that you like because you don't want to buy a house. We're gonna no, you don't say that. I do, right?
I'm just saying,
You're
I love
never going to buy a house. Here's why, right? Because you, for whatever reason, have decided you don't want to buy a house. Now, Mrs. Jones, you want to buy any house. And you found ones that were very much in your price range and ready to go. I can't answer that question, but here's what I will tell you. Tomorrow, when I call you at 3 o'clock, you're either going to say, we're in the market to buy a house or we're not. That's it. Because it doesn't make any sense for me to invest a lot of time unless you guys. Now, here's what I know. The wife always wins. Mrs. Zavis is yes, and 99% of the time countermands my no. Make sense? All right? But that's you tell them. Again, you can't blow smoke at people. Right? They have to make a decision. And for the people, that guy's going to find a problem everywhere.
Yes.
Everywhere. Jim, what'd you get?
My process is new. I don't have any yeses or nos.
Okay.
But what I'm learning here is not to be crushed with a no.
No.
because There's always opportunity in the future.
Absolutely. And that's why you tell me, you know what, Bob? It's not a good time right now for whatever reason. Would you be okay if I reached out to you in 90 days? Right? Maybe things will be changing. The market's changing. Interest rates are changing. Home prices, everything is changing. So the no today is a yes tomorrow, or a yes today is a no tomorrow. And that's why the mentality of salespeople has got to be that, that there is no constant. There is no yes or no. It's very fluid. What happens yesterday doesn't mean that it's going to be the same today. So anyways, any final words, David, before we close for today?
No, definitely just make sure that we recognize that, we all have the ability to change our mentality in a moment.
Yep.
You can always get a new idea. You can always get a new way of doing things.
Yep.
And so taking the opportunity to make the difference in your life
Absolutely.
gives you opportunities.
Couldn't say it better than that. So thank you, everybody. Have a great day. We wish you good selling. Go do great things. Bye-bye.